we have to pay attention to our life. We have to pay attention. And I think that what happens is we get caught up in the rat race of life and speeding through, that we forget that we have to be present for it. We have to pay attention, because if we don't pay attention, that's when we wake up 10 years later, 20 years later, and you go through this whatever midlife crisis, because you feel like you've slept through the last 10 years of your life, or the last 5 years, or the last 20 years. And it causes this anxiety. Like, my life has passed me by, and now what? And here I am, and I have nothing to show for it, or I don't feel satisfied, or I don't feel complete, I don't feel whole. Yeah. I think the reason why sometimes we become so dissatisfied is because we're missing all of those moments, and we want to do over, or we're starting a project and it's not happening quick enough. And we live in such a world of instant gratification that when they don't happen on our timeline, we think that we're a failure, or we think that we're not worthy, or we think that we're doing something wrong, where in fact, if we move at the pace of nature, it creates a whole different landscape for us to create the life that we want.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Better Together with Maria Menounos. I am not Maria Menounos. I'm Mr. Maria Menounos. Kevin Undergaro once again sitting in for my wife. Really excited about today's show, as I always am. Kelsey, when people ask me, like, what are you doing hosting Maria's show? You know what I say?
What?
I'm going to school.
Truly.
I am. I'm in class.
Yeah.
Every day. And like someone was like, well, how fun. I'm like, well, I never really thought school was fun, but it is rewarding. And thank you, for our Heal Squad for being so incredibly supportive to Kelsey and I, and to Stephen. Truly. While we try to carry the ship through. And on that note, please, you guys, subscribe to our Patreon. Subscribe to our YouTube. That's what I really want to see grow. I love our Patreon squad, and obviously, what I love about the Patreon community and our guest today, Rosie Acosta, led a Patreon Heal event for us, and we have wonderful things on Patreon. But I think the best thing about our Patreon is that we're able to build this intimate community. Yeah, which is wonderful. That we all count on each other, and and more and more. But our YouTube page, definitely needs more subscribers, and
a little more love.
It needs more love, and I'm tired. I'm gonna break down into tears. I'm really tired, and I don't get tired, Kelsey.
No, you don't.
Right? You know me now long enough to know I generally don't, but I am tired. And
me too.
And the best way to help us is please subscribe to our YouTube page, and if you have already, then please just tell friends about us. Yeah, and let's get those subscribers up. All right, so are we ready for our quote of the day?
I'm ready.
By the way, okay, ready for class to be back in session, because this is going to be a great episode. Some of our favorite guests are the ones that don't come from means, and we have ones who come from means. That's great, and they can offer a ton. And I think I bless them even more because they came from means and they were responsible with the means. Right. They didn't just take the means to kind of just laugh at the rest of the world and enjoy their great life. Right. They took the means to go help other people. So I honor that as well. But I'm especially sensitive to the people that did not come from means and that they figured it out. One of the things I'm most fascinated is, like, how did they figure it out? So, for you at home, I know a lot of our Heal Squad is not of means. And we have people who are, and thankfully, but we have many who are not of means but want to get better. They want to heal themselves. They want to become more successful in all areas of life. But it's really difficult without the means. So I'm always fascinated and so excited when we find the people that are figuring it out. I don't think anyone's figured it out, but we're always on the journey.
If you have, please tell us.
Yeah, right. But I don't think anyone really has. And the greats you talk to are still figuring out. They're still growing. 100%. Deepak Chopra was like, I'm trying to not age. Do you notice, like, he's saying things that we can hang on to in lessons, but then he was also, you could tell, he was also still working at things.
Oh, yeah.
So, it's constant. But anyway, our guest today is someone that doesn't come from means, but has, is figuring it out, or has figured a lot of things out. And those are the people that are like, oh my God, that's a mind I want to get in and I want to learn from. Your biggest obstacle will be to face the fact, and this one,
So good. When Kevin was reading it, he was going, oh.
And Kelsey was like, wait, what? Dude, that's not a good quote. I go, no, it's an amazing quote. This is a great quote, but it's such a knee to the groin for many people to hear this.
Yeah,
Your biggest obstacle will be to face the fact that you don't actually want to work that hard. But unless you do, you won't value what you've worked so hard for. And that quote is from Rosie Acosta, and I do completely agree. And I always say, if there's an easy way to do life and success and wellness, then tell me. But I don't know an easy way. It does start with the hard work. A little bit more about Ms. Acosta. Rosie Acosta has made her entire mantra about not only living in the moment, but also taking as much joy from that moment as possible. Growing up in East Los Angeles amongst gangs and violence, Rosie suffered from depression, anxiety, eating disorders, and a host of other issues. Her discovery of yoga opened the door for Rosie to begin to heal. In no time, she realized she could not only help her own mental health, but the mental health of others. Now, working as a yoga and meditation teacher, Rosie is committed to making sure her students recognize the limitless potential within themselves. With her dual podcast, Radically Loved and Wise, Rosie helps people achieve equilibrium between their mind, body, and spirit. It's worthy to note that Rosie's also a member of our Heal Squad. And with that, Better Together proudly welcomes our friend, Rosie Acosta. Hi, Rosie.
Hi. Hello.
So glad you're here.
I mean, it's so interesting to sit here and listen to all
that. To hear about yourself. Yeah, I know. But it's true. And like I said earlier, I'm excited to come from East LA. And if you're not from Southern California, you may not know that East LA it's a tough area. Now, Rosie, I don't know why. Winnie usually starts growling at the end of an interview to be picked up. I'll take her, honey, because you have more. I can hold her.
She usually lasts about a solid 40 minutes.
Okay, honey, here you go.
It happens sometimes. Are you kidding? It's welcome to my life in quarantine with all the dogs and trying to do a podcast and record live classes. It's been such a
just imagine having children, right?
Yeah.
So anyway, but Rosie grew up in East LA, not an easy place to grow up. It's a tough part of Los Angeles. And Rosie, can you tell us a little about your beginnings?
Yeah, I mean, it definitely was not uneasy. I'm a first generation Mexican American. My parents immigrated to this country, and so English was not my first language. I was born here, but I grew up in an environment where there was a lot of, a lot of people just struggling to get by. And it's so funny to think back now, because when I talked to my parents about it, they thought that America was Disneyland, that, we found this really great little apartment in this great place, and it was not it ended up not being a great neighborhood. But when people are struggling, especially people that immigrate to this country, like they just have to make do with what they have. And so it was a really tough environment. There was a lot of gangs, a lot of violence. As I got older, when you grow up in an environment like that, the thing that I always think is noteworthy is that you don't actually know the difference. You don't know that there's anything different than that. I mean, you just kind of grow up in an environment where you hear gunshots, or you see a scuffle, or you see a shooting. It's pretty traumatic for a child. I remember living through my first drive-by shooting. I was 6 years old, and the thing that was most poignant to me at that time was the fact that it didn't scare me. I think maybe I was just so used to it at that point that it just became something that, I just knew to get down and to just wait until it was done.
It doesn't scare you for the reason you said, because you grew up with it. Because I knew when back in the carny business, we would sell, we would go to certain areas that were very dangerous. And literally there was always shootings at different carnivals that were in depressed areas. And the one thing I noticed was when there were gunshots and things like that, the kids would run and duck and all that stuff. But as soon as the gunshots were done, the carnival was back and everyone was back. And because I grew up used to it.
Yeah.
And
That absolutely is the case. You just don't know any different. And so for me, growing up in that environment, it didn't actually start to show up until I was a teenager. By the time I was a teenager, living through the LA riots and all the upheaval from that, all of my friends, everybody got in trouble. It wasn't like, oh, somebody's acting out. You have that bad kid in school.
No,
everybody was the bad kid in school.
Yep.
And so I started to get in trouble with the law. I started ditching school. I got arrested.
Really? What'd you get arrested for, Rosie?
I got arrested for trying to steal a cop car.
Nice. Rosie's a badass. I love it. Ride or die, Rosie. Yes.
So it's so funny. I never talked about that until people started asking me about my background. Again, I didn't think it was noteworthy.
I didn't mean to, this wasn't trying to put you on the spot, Rose.
Oh, no, that's fine.
Because I love it
totally
because
fine.
it just gives hope to anybody. Because I see you, you're beautiful, you're put together, and and I know people look and go, yeah, okay, easy for her to say, but when you hear the story and you hear that you made mistakes. It wasn't like you just were a victim. You went out and victimized too. It sounds like, and again, I'm saying that because I did the same thing, vandalized, and it's awful. I was a terror, So no, I get it. No, and but please continue, and thank you for offering that.
Yeah, of course. I'm a pretty open book. I have no issue talking about my past. I just think it's funny now to hear myself say it. But so I was really struggling during that time. So I was on probation, which meant I basically couldn't do anything bad because I'd go to jail. And even then I was still, ditching school and doing stuff. I was on the McDonald's diet. So I was severely overweight at the time. I was almost 200 pounds. And then I went down this really depressive state because I couldn't go out and do anything. And so it was just, everything was converging on me. And as a teenager and as I got older, I didn't really understand what the point of life was. I mean, I grew up in an environment that was showing me that the world was not set up for me,
Yeah.
And I was really grappling with the idea of, okay, so why are we here? Like, what are we doing here? And it wasn't until my mom was just trying to work so hard to get to me, because I also had such a strained relationship with my parents because they just didn't understand, right? They're like, what is wrong with her? Why is she doing this? And they didn't understand what PTSD meant. They didn't understand what anxiety was, and they didn't understand.
No, and they came here with good intentions. We're going to leave our village, which my Italian grandparents did, and Maria's parents did, and and then they come here and they're like, what? And it's it's America, and it is Disney on one hand, and then it's a lot of toxicity and insanity on the other, and it's a lot for people who come from more humble beginnings.
That's right. So once we got to that space, my mom ended up coming home. She was working at the Children's Hospital in Hollywood. And one of her friends said, oh, there's this thing she should try if she has anxiety and stress. It's called meditation. And I think it would really help her. And she ended up coming home with these self-realization pamphlets. It's a Paramahansa Yogananda. Anybody who's ever read the autobiography of a yogi, they have this center on Sunset Boulevard. And my mom came home with these pamphlets, and she kind of this is how we communicated. She would just leave stuff on the counter for me to see. And because anytime we had a conversation, it was always a fight.
Yeah. Yep.
And so I started to look through it, and I'll never forget. It was this little pamphlet that said, affirmations for a happy life. And I was like, what is this? What does this mean? And I started to read through it, and it was compelling enough to me that I decided to ditch school again and take the bus to the Self-Realization Fellowship. And once I got there, I went into this beautiful temple that to me reminded me of the Taj Mahal that I had seen in one of my world history books. And it was so weird. It was totally weird. People were smiling. People were nice.
Yeah,
People
and
were
it's
so
weird.
inviting.
Yes. And it's strange, right? You think
It
they're
is.
almost like you think they're aliens.
Yes. I'm like, why are they smiling? Why are they not like holding their bags away from me?
Yes.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Why are they being so nice? And so I went into this lecture that was happening, and this lovely English woman was talking about happiness and how we're responsible for our own happiness. And as I sat there, after a couple minutes, maybe 30 minutes, I kept looking around because I was waiting for the man, to come and give the lecture that I was sitting in on. And then I realized 40 minutes in, I'm like, oh no, she's the guy. This is the person who is leading this lecture about happiness, about how we have the power to create our life and how we can make different choices. And then she led us through this really beautiful meditation. And it was a moment where she invited us to close our eyes, that I felt my body and my breath. And it was, I talk about this a lot because I don't feel like everybody has to have this sort of spiritual awakening, and it's not always this big event. I mean, it could be as spontaneous as.
But wait, let's back up. But Rosie, it wasn't a big event. You got on the local bus and you went to a free thing and you picked up a pamphlet, okay? And for other people, it's listening to your podcast. It's the same thing. But you didn't go and, you didn't go and train with, the greatest guru. I've known people who've gone to India and jumped in like sacred lakes and, okay, and great. But no, everything you're saying is stuff that is tangible. That's stuff we can all grab onto. What was it do you think that what was it that you think that made you do it, that made you look at that pamphlet and say, okay, it's time? Like, how did you get there?
Yeah, that's such a great question. It's such a great question. I think I was just at a point where if I didn't do anything, I was going to die. I mean, truly. Like, I didn't understand what the point of life was, and it felt like there was something that was compelling me to just do one more inquiry, to just inquire, just one more thing. There was curiosity. I was curious, and so I think that that's really what compelled me to investigate this thing. And looking back at it now, I mean, there was so many other you guys know this. I mean, there was so many other avenues I could have gone through. I could have ignored the pamphlet and ended up in jail, or worse, or become a drug addict, but I didn't. There was something that was, I can't even explain it. To me, that's the whole basis of what radical love is. It's the whole basis of why I do what I do. So once I was able to discover that, it was a slow and gradual process to learn about yoga philosophy, learn about meditation, learn about taking responsibility, learn about making different choices. And I fell in love with it. And it was the only thing that I had in my life to restore me back to this meat sack, this person.
I think for other people, it goes back to an awareness. If, it's feeling like I'm not living my purpose, or I don't eat well, or I'm medicating, or I'm not with good people. And I think it's having that feeling that, if you're listening, that could be your moment to do what Rosie did and say, you don't have to get all the way to that point where you want to jump off a bridge, but it's maybe feeling those things that get you there. And I also want to say, to even, I think, make your story a little bit even more aspirational. I don't feel as though you would have it was like A, yoga, or B, go to jail. I feel like you were doing teenage stuff, but I think it would have been probably a life of, unfulfilling, maybe relationships, some toxic eating, toxic behavior, a job that wasn't the most fulfilling. And then, you'd have children and you'd try to hopefully get have them have the life you didn't have. And I actually think that's probably would have happened, but it was not going to be your best Rosie. And I think there's a lot of people out there that are living that life I just described. But to get to where you are, it's not that you're making it sound easy, because I know there was a lot, but if you think about it, it started with a pamphlet and a ride on a bus and being open. And I do think I had that same feeling too, because I was in in a family environment, but then in work environments where everyone was just negative. It was like, I was in a carny business. So it was ex-cons and thieves and junkies. And then it was mob adjacent. So even like the money, it was just all darkness. And then the couple of bars I worked at, same thing. And, because there's all addiction there. And then the nicest place I think I worked was construction, because they were just all more just like straight shooters, and they were messy too. But then I do remember getting into certain environments where everybody was just smiling and happy and feeling like you did, like, what? Oh my, am I in a Twilight Zone? Like this isn't real. But I think when you start to consciously pursue that, it starts changing things. I know it's a lot of people I know who are in right now in the pandemic, Rosie, who are in family systems where they're with really your classic, middle class, negative, or lower middle class, but it just negative mindsets around them, and they're stuck with that, and that it's hard.
Yeah, no, it's you bring up so many incredible points. And I think that the one thing that is the tie-in is the fact that we have to pay attention to our life. We have to pay attention. And I think that what happens is we get caught up in the rat race of life and speeding through, that we forget that we have to be present for it. We have to pay attention, because if we don't pay attention, that's when we wake up 10 years later, 20 years later, and you go through this whatever midlife crisis, because you feel like you've slept through the last 10 years of your life, or the last 5 years, or the last 20 years. And it causes this anxiety. Like, my life has passed me by, and now what? And here I am, and I have nothing to show for it, or I don't feel satisfied, or I don't feel complete. I don't feel whole.
Yeah.
And that is, I think, the biggest takeaway with, especially living through this pandemic, and anybody that's ever gone through an obstacle, and every single buddy has gone through an obstacle, we all can relate on the same level of knowing that the moment that we pay attention to where we are in our life and assess and take in that everything that's happening is happening. I'm not saying that it's happening for a reason, or it's happening because of X, Y, Z. It's happening whether we enjoy it or not. So we have the ability and we have the opportunity to make a choice. How are you going to take this information in? Are you going to realize, wow, the last 10 years of my life, I feel like I've been sleeping? Or I hear this all the time, as part of, episodes that you guys have done with experts, or in our little like heal squad, conversations that we have. I wish I would have found this sooner. Or I wish I would have done this 20 years ago or 10 years ago, but you're doing it now.
And what happened in those 10 or 20 years, even though you're sleeping, it got you here. Yeah. Because I feel I was asleep too for the last 2 decades for sure. Maybe my whole life, but certainly the last 2 decades.
Well, so how do you, just a quick question, how do you reflect on that? Like, how do you reconcile that for yourself when you're saying, oh, I was asleep for the last 20 years? Like, how do you move forward from that?
I just think of Biggie. Start at the bottom, now we here.
Yeah.
No, so I'm just like, no, I'm here now. And then I reflect on the assets I have and the gratitude for the blessings, but then also I've learned through people like you, Rosie, and the healers here, is the gratitude for the negative things that people did to me or did to Maria, and how much that helped too and was part of the story. And and just my big thing is, okay, so we're here now. What cards do we have in our deck to play, and how do we play them? And I'm waking up now, and what do we do now? I'm one that I know logically that to dwell too much on the waste of the 10 years or the 20 years isn't good. So what you want to do is you want to reflect on those 10 or 20 years and say, what are the nuggets we can take out, the learning lessons? What are the things now we know now so we can do differently. And so that's kind of how I process it. But I am aware that I probably was awake for 10 to 12. I certainly was. And for me, it was just work, and work more, and then just work more. That was the only thing I knew how to do, was just work harder. The more you get crapped on, work harder. Everything went back to that.
Well, yeah. And that's that. We are all on the same boat. I think for all of us, we can pinpoint those moments where we're just so quick to speed through life that everything around us is blurry because we're going so quickly.
Yes.
And I think that this is why I love yoga and meditation and mindfulness so much, is because it gives us an opportunity to slow down, to pause for a moment, to be mindful about what's happening in this present moment. I want to take in everything that's happening right now so that I can feel whole and complete. And I think that the more that we do that, the more we feel the richness of our life. I think the reason why sometimes we become so dissatisfied is because we're missing all of those moments, and we want to do over, or we're starting a project and it's not happening quick enough. And we live in such a world of instant gratification that when they don't happen on our timeline, we think that we're a failure, or we think that we're not worthy, or we think that we're doing something wrong, where in fact, if we move at the pace of nature, it creates a whole different landscape for us to create the life that we want. And we practice because we forget. This is something that I talk about all the time in my workshops and courses and stuff, that we practice because we forget. The mind is designed to want what's better. We always are going to want what's better. And when we finally get to that place, or you get the house that you want, or you get the career that you want, or you're with your partner, it's like, yeah, but it would be better if it was at the beach, or, oh, this person would be better if they were 5 inches taller, or, oh, it would be better if we could do this and do this, right? I mean, do you guys agree, Kelsey?
Oh my, are you kidding me? It's my whole problem. I'm always on to the next thing. Okay, now I'm going to, yes.
Yeah. Definitely. And so when then can we actually take in where we are in the moment, if the mind, and this is the thing, it's not our fault. It's not anybody's fault listening. I mean, this is just what the brain is designed for, survival, right? So it's just innate for us to do that. But the beauty is that we can train the mind to make different choices. I mean, that's the only way that we can achieve change, is to make small incremental steps. You know, we see somebody else that maybe is doing something that we want to be doing, and we think, wow, how are they doing that? How did they get that? How did they achieve that? Well, that's so brave. And then we think of ourselves, we can't do that. There's no way we can do that. And we absolutely can create and do anything that we want to do. Mm-hmm. It's just a matter of making those small incremental changes. I think that's where the quote that you said earlier, that's what spawned it, because there was a moment in time where I felt like, oh, I grew up in this really tough environment, and I came from this really gritty background, and now I'm traveling all over the world and working with really incredible people. So now I don't have to work as hard. Like, I did all the hard work. But then I would encounter these situations where I'm like, wow, this is life. Shitty things. Sorry. Oops.
No, you're fine.
Shitty things happen. And, you know, that's part of our, that's why we practice. We practice because of things like the pandemic. We practice when we are going through suffering and we're going through pain. We practice because we need to feel strong and grounded in our own sense of self and our own abilities to move through difficult things and difficult situations. And I think that's part of creating that change. When we can see the resilience that we are, because we are, and we can see the strength that we have to go through obstacles, then it makes us strong enough to take those small steps to change, to maybe take that class that we wanted to take, or maybe put that podcast out that we want to create, or reach out to that person that we think may not give us the time of day.
Well, Rosie, if you look at your life, and if I were coaching you and you were earlier on in your journey, I would say, Rosie, we were 6 and survived, drive-by shootings. You think we can't survive a podcast that we put out and only gets like maybe 2 listens at first? We're fine. And I think that we all have to look back and realize we're a lot tougher than we realize, and we have a lot more blessings. So even with your situation, I hear a mother that worked at Children's Hospital, which means she was someone of service. And she cared enough to find out what's wrong with my daughter. And yes, she tried in her way, and you guys didn't vibrate on the same wavelength at the time, and as most relatives don't. We don't listen to our loved ones. I know my wife rarely listens to me anymore. But I think you had also those blessings too. And I think when you look back and you say, I'm tougher than I realize because I did survive this. Why wouldn't I survive putting on a podcast? And I look back and say, well, hey, I had a mother that cared enough about me, or parents that wanted a better life for me. Their intention to get me to East LA was a better life that they believed in Mexico. So I think those are some of the things. Let's go back to the journey, because it clearly didn't go from you have this awakening and then life changes immediately, right? So take us to, because I agree, it is these incremental steps, and it's one little step at a time. And I think it's appreciating the steps too, not being like, okay, come on, now when? Wow, now when do I have no, just like I'm sure in that moment, wasn't it nice to appreciate that lady's voice and seeing all these smiling people around you, and so take us to, so you go to this meeting and bring me more along on the journey.
So I go through, and it's so interesting because I was so much more patient back then than I am now, and I'll just totally call myself out on it. As you get older, you just become so impatient.
Yes.
We can talk about that later.
Yep.
But
then I think you get even older, and then you can get your patience back. You can have even more. Because you realize it's all a joke. You realize, like, we're all gonna die. Like, that's the one thing no one wants to accept. That we're gonna have obstacles in life. We're gonna, like you said, it's gonna be the pandemic, and then it's gonna be, on 9/11. It's always gonna be something. Yeah. That is life, and we are as young and as vibrant as all of us are right now. At some point, we're gonna say goodbye here. But I look at it, we're gonna move on to something greater, and it's just gonna be in the next adventure. So while we're here, we do what we can, but you kind of start realizing, like, and if you think of even people who've accomplished a ton and are gone now, what does it matter? Like, even people, when you look at like all they accomplished, okay, big deal. If they didn't really positively affect other people, if they didn't really help the world, if they didn't leave behind messages, or so I think you go long enough, you start going, yeah, really? And I notice it with older people now too, where they just don't care in a great way. They're just like,
yes.
Nah.
It's just, they pay no mind.
Yeah.
They just pay no mind. Yes. I love that.
So go ahead.
Great.
So you're at, and I think there's a strength to being at rock bottom too.
Oh yeah.
Because everything is up, right?
Yeah. That's something that I talk about as well. So during this time when I was starting to have this awakening, I was still, almost 200 pounds. I was really overweight, and I decided that I wanted to sign up for the LA Marathon. I hated running more than anything in the world. So I'm like, let me just sign up to run a marathon. Why not? But
wait, why not? I can say why, but can you tell me why you did that?
Why did I do that?
Yeah.
Well, I think that for me, it just, I wanted to run. I wanted to just like shed, I wanted to just do something where I was going to use my body, because I hadn't for a long time.
And so what it was too is it's a goal. And I'm like big when you're at that point, you guys, I'm like, just hit singles. That's a big single to run a marathon, but still, it's not, I'm starting a multi-million-dollar business.
Right.
I'm not going to like lose weight in a month. No, I'm going to conquer this goal, which is hard to do. Now I'm going to have to train, but that's healthy, right? You're going to run, you're going to have to spend time alone. You might even meet cool people like that are doing the same thing. But really it's about crossing that finish line, and no matter how long it takes you, but it's like, no, bitch, I did it. Now what's next? So I feel like it's a great warm up, and a single, it's a little victory. I know when I've been in my lowest moments, there were things I didn't do because I knew I would fail. It's going to sound stupid, but we went surfing one time, or a bunch of people went, and I didn't want to. It was at my lowest moment, and I was like, no. And Maria was like, why? I said, because I know if I can't do it, I'm going to even feel like a bigger loser. I'm not ready. I need to hit singles. I need to do things that I know that I can achieve, little goals, like little things. And anyway, so I think that is a great tip for somebody who's in that point. And maybe it's a half marathon, maybe it's a 5K,
Yeah.
but it's just something like that. It got your mind. And think about when you're training, Rosie, you're not focusing on how overweight you are, how you wasted your time, how you're not educated, how you're not, no, you're like, I got to focus on trying to get my lungs in my body in shape to go 26 miles.
Yeah.
So, but great instinct on your part, I think, to do that.
Yeah. And, it's interesting that you say that because it just came to me now that my older sister had, she had signed up for it and she ended up not doing it. And so I think that's what had left a little bit of it left that little bug in my ear. And so I started to train. My trainer, the coach, was telling me that I should do yoga. And I was like, oh, I do yoga. I know yoga, but I was doing yoga philosophy. I was meditating. I wasn't doing the physical component. And once he said that, that's when I started to get into the physical practice. And so I started practicing yoga. I started training for a marathon. And it was so funny to me the whole time because of how I had to coax myself every day to run. It was like, just do a little bit, just do 10 minutes and then you can stop. Like just little bits at a time, because to me, running was something that we did to get away from the cops. It wasn't like it's a leisure sport, right? We ran because we needed to get away. It wasn't running because it was a cool thing to
I'll have
do.
friends from the hood that will tell me like, you never saw joggers.
Right, ever.
That's
not a thing.
Doesn't happen in our neighborhood.
So it was a great experience for me to, this was the first thing I did in my life that I started and I finished. And so that to me was, I think, the push that I needed, the sort of, it's what showed me that I could complete something. I can start and I can finish something. And if I can run 26.2 miles and survive, I could do anything.
That's right. Yeah.
Right.
There's a great movie out there, Bridget Runs a Marathon. I don't know if you ever saw it. It was an indie film, but it was kind of the same thing based on a true story. She didn't have the hardship you did, but it all was about this. It was beautiful, actually, very inspiring. But and again, it doesn't have to be a marathon. It doesn't even have to be running, but I love the idea of like, no, I did it.
Yeah. Yeah. And so that began to open this door of, oh, what else can I do? What other things can I start and finish? What else can I begin to create? And from there, I was already working. I had this job at the mall as a receptionist at a hair salon, and it started to just incrementally grow and grow in responsibility. And then I got recruited to run this celebrity hair famous salon in West Hollywood. And then my boss at the time, I just, thinking about it now, I had a lot of people in my life that were, I would say were angels in my life that came in at the right time, the right moments, and said the right things. And I really do believe that when you put yourself in that frequency, like doing the work that you have to do to get yourself there. This is the thing about manifestation that always bothered me a little bit. This is how we can demystify it. We actually have to do the work to get there, to create the life, to create the things that we want to manifest in our life. We have to get into alignment with ourselves. We have to get into alignment with the things that we want to create. And then the universe makes it so. So you can't just be laying around playing, on your phone, expecting for your life to come through. It's like your destiny.
Go finish. No, you finish, Rosie. Sorry.
No, it's like your destiny is happening as you scroll. Like if you have time to scroll, you have time to build something. So this is where I can say we need to be able to put ourselves into that space of doing the work. Go ahead.
Yeah, no, what I was going to say is I think a lot of people will do the part of manifestation, which is like look in the mirror and go, today is going to be your day. And I want to be this or I want to be that. And they think that's it. And to me, you nailed it when it wasn't, yes, the angels came to you, but you changed your frequency to receive. Yeah. And I realized when I was a kid, I just so badly wanted mentors and I never had any, but I also probably didn't have the frequency, to have somebody who would see through my messiness and go, there's
Yes.
something good inside here. I just didn't have that. But if you changed, to me, it was like the changing of the frequency allowed all this, and also allowed you to see them. You may have had them in the past, but you probably may not have seen them because you were in such a haze.
Yeah. Well, I was closed off. That's the thing that we do when we experience disappointment. We build walls, we build barriers.
Tell me about that. Tell me about that. We experience disappointment, and tell me what happens.
Yeah. I mean, whenever we experience something not working, or for me, it was just the disappointment of being in an environment where I saw bad things happen to good people all the time. It's disappointing. It's disheartening. And the older I got, I would still see a lot of injustice or things happen. And it would just make me feel like, oh, this world is not for me. Success is not for me. This is for other people. This is for people that aren't like me. And so that begins to build a barricade, because you don't want to get disappointed. I didn't want to get hurt. I didn't want to get disappointed. So you just build a barricade around your heart, essentially, is what you're doing, because then you have to be hard. You have to be a hard person. For me, growing up in an environment where I'm dealing with hard people, like you have said, I mean, when you were, in the carny business, you're dealing with ex-cons. So I'm dealing with people that are hard. So I felt like I needed to be hard as well. But it was so counterintuitive for me, and it's counterintuitive for most people, because we're loving beings. We want to love, we want to be seen, we want to be heard, we want to be understood, we want to be acknowledged, we want to be in community. And when you block yourself off because you're afraid of getting hurt, or, when I was a teenager, I was in a relationship with a guy that was totally abusive and emotionally abusive and just a terrible person. And so I just told myself the story: relationships are difficult, and men are just there to hurt you. And so, by the time I met my partner, who I'm still with for the last 18 years, it was difficult for me to go into a relationship because he was not that person, and I just assumed, I'm like, oh, you're just like every other man that's here to hurt me. So I have to protect myself. I have to just close myself off and not get too close. And I think that when you're hard, that's the thing. We think, oh, I'm just going to close myself off to romantic relationships, but you end up closing yourself off to everything else. It's not just relationships. It's you're closing yourself off to the love from your family. You're closing yourself off to the love from your environment, from something that can potentially help you in your career. Just over the time, it begins to sort of corrode what's inside if you don't use it, right? I mean, that's the thing that begins to happen. And I feel that's just tying back into what we were saying earlier about how we can become so disappointed and asleep in our life. I think that that's part of the sleeping through your life, is creating this barricade around your heart that doesn't allow anything else to come in. So when we can actually break through that and give ourselves, the chance to take a chance, to make a mistake, to fail. I mean, I love your story about the surfing, because you already knew. I have two things that I want to say about that, because I can totally relate, and you're literally speaking to my heart when you're saying that. Because when you're not in a great place, you're experiencing a lot of disappointments, and we've all had those weeks where everything just one thing after another, and then we perpetuate it by saying, oh, this is a bad week. Now what? Now what's the next thing? And when it rains, it pours. And we have all these really cute, mug sayings that it's like, oh, yeah, here it is, Monday again. And it's like, you're perpetuating that. You can have the opportunity to stop that from happening and say, you know what? I'm going to reset. I'm going to actually go. I've had a tough week. And you know what? I'm going to be okay with failing. I'm going to be okay with this. I'm going to go and put myself out there. And it does create an opening. But it really depends on the type of person that you are, because if you're not in a good place, then it's probably better for you to not do it. But the thing is, it's about cultivating discernment. And that's another reason why I love meditation and mindfulness so much, and doing all of these healing modalities. We have to cultivate the discernment within ourselves to know what is best for us. So we really have to get to know what that edge is for us, to discern, will this really hurt me, or am I just protecting myself? Am I just being hard because I don't want to take this chance? Or no, actually, I know that going to this party or going to this event is really going to make me feel uncomfortable because I'm going to go hang around a bunch of successful people and I'm not there yet. And it's just going to show me that I'm not good. Or it could be like, you know what? I'm going to go to that party with all these really successful people and network and just see how I can be of service and learn from them, as opposed to just constantly comparing yourself to other people.
I think, you know, what you do is you you build your foundation. So let's say we go to Rosie's story when it was 200 pounds and in trouble with the law and just kind of getting out of that. That wouldn't have been the time to send you out to a party to network of like everyone who's like fabulous and like, no, because you're going to go, no. But now it's okay because you've done the work. And I love this idea of, let me recheck my notes about discernment. This is a great quote. Cultivate discernment, which again goes back to awareness, but having that self-awareness to say, you know, I'm not ready right now for that. And listen, I'll tell you guys, someone on my level, I was telling Kelsey this morning, there's some podcasts that I used to love listening to about people that have had a lot of success in Hollywood, in script writing or directing or whatever. And it makes me sad to hear it because I'm not doing that right now. And so I'm like, I'm just not going to listen right now. You know, why would I, you know what I mean? Because then I shame myself and I go through the process where I like, come on, Kev, man up and, you know, listen and learn. And I was like, no. And I had a friend years ago tell me, because sometimes when I get into like construction and renovation and all that stuff, I'm good at fixing things and cleaning up messes and building things. I mean, but it's not, it's hard work and I don't love it. I love the end result. But I tell you that there were times when I'm doing it, I get like such dark thoughts. Like, where did my life go? Why, you know, I was a head writer of a network. Why am I here? You know, and my friend was like, you know what? Don't be doing that work anymore. And you know what? I was like, you know, it's that simple. And, but now because through my evolution and my success, now I do it. And it's like, you know, once in a while I'll get a little like cranky doing it, but not really. Now I'm okay. But I love the idea of the discernment and to know, you know, when you're ready. And I think, some things that you're not ready for, don't show up for. But I also don't want to prevent people because I'm always like saying half a life is showing up and something good will come out of it. But your foundation needs to be, I think, a little more solid. If you're like at that place where you need something radical as you did, you know, as I did, then I think it's best to just kind of do the work, which is I'm going to run the marathon. And did you change your diet too, Rosie? Did you just stop wanting to eat better food?
Yeah. So I had a friend that was a trainer at, do you remember Bally's Total Fitness?
Of course I do. Yeah.
So I had a trainer friend that worked at Bally's Total Fitness, and he's the one that started teaching me about organic food. He started teaching me, he gave me the book on the China study. So I was doing all of this research. I started studying Ayurveda because I was like, oh, this is part of yogic philosophy. So I want to learn about this. And little by little, I started to, again, small changes. I mean, that's really the story of my beginning anyways, just doing little bits at a time, incorporating just a handful of things to crowd out all the bad stuff. And actually that, before I became a yoga teacher, I started to study nutrition. So I did become a nutritionist first. And then I decided with everything that I was doing to become a yoga teacher, because I wanted to bring all of this information to people like the people I grew up with, people at lower income communities and at-risk youth and people who I knew this would really serve.
You know what's great too? Yeah. It's like it's a yoga mat and get on YouTube. You know what I mean? It doesn't cost a lot for people that are not. It doesn't
cost anything.
Right. And it's a little small area to do your yoga, so which I love. Being a nutritionist, was there a lot of schooling involved, or were you able to do things online?
No, I did it. I did a couple of courses in college, and then I went through a certification course with the American Fitness Association, and then I did IIN years later, the Institute of Integrative Nutrition. Then I did that. It was like a hybrid. I did it online years later.
And for yoga, did you take any classes in how to teach yoga? Yeah.
Yes, I did yoga teacher training. I did a couple of yoga teacher trainings through this small studio in Pasadena back in the early 2000s. And then I did a 200-hour teacher trainings through Yoga Works in LA. Yeah.
You know, and what I'm hearing, Rosie, is all of this I can wrap my hands and my head around. This is not 12 years of med school at Harvard, or do you know what I mean? This is what I love is like, I'm running a marathon. Now I'm going to take this online class and I'm going to, a couple of classes here and a thing here. And, obviously it took time to put it all together, but it's not the amount of time and money that everybody can't do. That's what I love about it.
Yeah. And, you said something that I want to touch back on because it really, again, really speaks to me, what you were talking about, how your friend was telling you, what to stop doing it. And this whole thing, I want to go back to just discernment because it's all ties in. There's a difference between discomfort and pain. And the difference for us to be able to acknowledge that difference, it's a skill. We have to develop that skill because some of us, Kelsey was a gymnast, right?
Yes.
She trained and I'm sure that, and I have other athlete friends of mine that they have to push through the pain, right? So that creates a different type of pain threshold. It creates another sort of this like, oh, you got to push through this. And for me, it was the opposite. It was the discomfort. Like I didn't like to feel the discomfort. And so you have to sort of meet yourself where you are and to understand the difference. So in yoga class, we cultivate that discernment. She's chewing on my
Your
plug
puppy?
right now, the little puppy.
Oh no.
We cultivate that discernment through the body, right? So if I'm doing a posture and I say, okay, part of your practice is to breathe through the discomfort. There are certain postures, if your body's really tight, you're not moving, that you can breathe through. See, somebody who has a higher pain threshold might be in full pain, but they're going to push through it. They're going to push through it and they're just going to stay there because the teacher said so and they're going to stay. Somebody else might be like, oh no, that's uncomfortable. I don't like it. And they'll pull out of it. Where if they kind of breathe through that space, they might be able to push through that discomfort and actually feel the benefits of the posture. Then there are other people who understand the discernment and maybe decide, I might want to push myself today a little bit more. I want to take it easy today. But how we do anything on the mat is how we do everything in life. And so if we're able to discern, okay, I think today I need to take it easy. I need to slow down. This is stuff I was talking about during our heal event. I'm like, where are you? Where are you at? Do you want to take that extra chaturanga? Do you want to build a little bit more heat? Or do you want to restore a little bit more and skip something and just breathe and anchor in on your breath? So how we do anything on the mat is how we do everything. So if we are the person that's going to push through that pain and just sit in that pigeon pose and my hip, it's like, no, I'm just going to push through. Where else does that show up in your life? Are you pushing yourself? Are you working too hard? Are you just continuing to go and not slowing down enough for your body to reconcile what is happening, to give yourself that space? So that's where these practices come in, because it's going back to what you were saying, Kev, about the awareness and about what your friend was saying. Oh, listening to this podcast is causing me pain. It really is causing me pain because it's showing me something that I'm not doing. And therefore my physical body, and to me, for people that are like, what is this discernment? Go to the grossest part of your body. Where do you feel it? Where do you feel the discomfort? When you're on social media, are you feeling your chest get constrained? Are you feeling the hairs on your forearm stand up? Are you not breathing? What is the physiological reaction? And then can you stop what is happening? If it's causing you that pain, like say Kevin listening to that podcast was making him really uncomfortable in his body. Maybe he didn't even realize that he wasn't breathing, or he would like get really tense. He had to stop listening to that podcast. Maybe for the people listening, maybe it's social media. Maybe it's you take a social media break for a little while. You give yourself a break.
Yeah.
Because only then can we reset ourselves and then go back and reintroduce things little at a time. We're not going to figure it all out at once, just like we've been saying. It's going to take some time, but the whole idea is to give yourself the opportunity to take that time and give yourself that patience.
And I'm going back to that cultivate discernment, Rosie. Rosie, put something, do you have a chew toy to put in her mouth?
Yeah.
Good. That's what you have to do. No, I'm just saying as doggy daddy for so long, if her little baby's biting a plug, you don't want that. I think it comes down to,
Okay.
no, you're good. Rosie, cultivating discernment is it's how to cultivate the discernment. And let me offer a few things, if I may. I love this idea because I'm a push through the pain guy. I think I'm not being tough. My whole life was, I had a very physically tough dad, and I had an oldest brother who was the toughest guy in our town. So I was constantly told that you're not tough. So what does that do anyway, someone like me, you can either buckle up and go, oh, I guess I'm not tough, or you can go, oh yeah, you want to see how tough I am? Mm-hmm. I'll go work a 56-hour day, straight doing heavy lifting all day long. And I won't, I'll go and take on this person who's twice my size. I'll go, and so I've always been I will just push through the pain, but I love what you're saying, because if I'm the one on the mat who's just going to push through, look at your life, and where were the times that you pushed through the pain and it was good, but then where were the times you pushed through the pain and you should have just let it go? And I can tell you there's two major projects that I did that just, one bankrupted me, the other just kicked the crap out of me. And it was that I will push through the pain. That, thank you for this blessing of this interview, Rosie, because that's what it was with me, is I'll push through the pain. I don't care how bad this ship is sinking. I will continue to push through. And it was interesting, Maria, bless Maria, with my network now, AfterBuzz, the pandemic really kicked the crap out of us and put us on hiatus. And Maria was like, Kevin, you are a tough dog to put down. And if it wasn't for the pandemic, you would have just kept working there 200 hours a week, giving yourself to, 400 hosts every single day, spending tons of money and time. And, 2 or 3 years mentally, you haven't really been in it. Like, you're just doing it because I'm going to push through the pain. And it was funny. Tony Robbins was working I did one of his seminars, and he was working with a lady, and I could tell she was like me. She wouldn't give up on her business. She just was like, I'm going to keep pushing through. And he just was, he's Mr. Positive, and here's how you fix things. Yeah. And it was a business mastery class. So I didn't expect him to do this, but what a breakthrough. And he was like, you know what? You're burnt out, and this is no longer the business for you. And no, it's just walk away. Don't push through the pain. So I think it goes back to that discernment, like you said, which is just wonderful. It's discerning. So I think it's asking yourself, is this discomfort or pain going to lead to something good for me in the long run? Or is it not? I think that's one helpful way for me listening to those podcasts. It's like, listen, all it's going to do right now is bum me out. So I'm like, I don't need to be listening to this to show I'm a tough guy and that but I think it's having that discernment to know, and especially what state you're in. If you're in a fragile state, they don't have that strong foundation. No, cut the social media. All that stuff but I think it's that discernment and awareness. And but I have to say, like, this also goes for the people you keep company with. If you don't feel good after talking to them, you know what? Like, it's maybe time to just wish them well and peace and send them on their way.
Yeah. Oh, I totally agree. Oh, we can have a full conversation.
Yeah, but no, I think we need to, because listen, I have a lot of my friends, and I'm all my AfterBuzz hosts is 2,000 of them, and 98% of them know they can DM me and find me, and I will jump right in and do anything they need me to do to help them with their lives. But the one thing that I see, it's a lot of times it's the environments they're in.
And Rosie, people can also follow you.
Yes. Oh, yes.
Follow you on Instagram. You do your stuff with Wanderlust. You have something exciting happening that I want to do. I don't know how to do it, but I want to do it.
Yeah. So people can always listen to the podcast, Radically Loved Radio. I have some of my contents up on YouTube. I teach weekly live classes on Wanderlust TV. So if you want to practice with me, you can subscribe to that. But I'm actually doing this this virtual retreat called the Manifestation Retreat. And we're going to talk all about demystifying the myths of manifestation. And it's going to be a great way to show you how you can support yourself and how you can create, different goals and how you can utilize the power of manifestation to create them. We're going to talk about change and transformation. So it's going to be really fun. And that's April 9th through the 11th. And you can get information by going to my website, radicallylove.com.
I love it.
Rosie, you're such a blessing. And thank you for coming on today. And I'm sure we're going to have you on many, many more times. And
Winnie is so loud.
yeah, Winnie is really snoring. So I'm so embarrassed. Honey, come on. She's here. I know. I let her sleep. So
That's fine. Are you kidding? I love it.
But yeah, so Rosie, let's definitely stay in touch and keep doing our work together. And like I said, you're such a blessing, and a lot of really great takeaway here on this 2-part episode.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Well, and can I say, being a follower of the show and just knowing you guys, like you and Kelsey have been doing such an incredible job. So I just want to say thank you for continuing to do the show. You guys are so awesome. And I love Regular Guy Fridays. They're my highlight of the week.
Oh.
And so I definitely wanted to say that. And I look forward to staying connected. And I'm so honored to also be a part of the Heal Squad. I mean, the work that you guys are doing here with this is so incredible, and all the work that Maria's done and continues to do. I'm so honored, and I feel very privileged to be here and to be a part of this community.
Oh, we love you.
All right, Rosie. We will talk, as we say in Boston, we'll talk shortly. Wow. Amazing part 1 with Rosie. As I said at the top, I love the people that came from hardship and then figured it out.
Yeah.
My favorite guest to have on this show.
When I liked too that you were pulling it out of her, right? You were like, she was even when she started talking about her kind of like breakthrough at this place that she went to from the pamphlet her mother gave her. She was like, I mean, not all of us can. And you're like, no, what are you talking about? You're not dipping yourself in some, forbidden lake in the middle of Iceland to find, so I really liked that, and I liked what you were pulling out of her, because it's just so relatable, and all of us can have these breakthroughs, right? And if we just do that little bit of work.
Yeah, and it starts out with the small steps, and I can't wait for part 2, because now we're going to go even deeper.
So stick around.
Right, Winnie?